my favorite commandments. These are some commandments I've gotten from students that are incorrect, but are absolutely hilarious. They're just, funny. Do not steal. Do not steal is there because that's metal. Instead of,
Thou shalt not give a quiz on the first day of class. Amen.
Thou shalt not have class when it's 25 below zero. You can tell. Some of these are from people that live here, that don't speed on base. It's a federal offense, so especially not on base. Shouldn't speed anyway, of course. Unless you have an Audi SQ5 and you just have to try it every once in a while. But
Are there four that were directly referencing not stepping out in your life?
I don't know why people do these. Although it wouldn't necessarily do all of those at once. These are from different students at different times. But yeah, they're close. Or as the Russians would say, приблизительно, но нет сигаров, which means close but no cigar. That could be funny. Maybe. Well, according to them, it's the same thing with the Klingons and Shakespeare. If you remember, the Klingons said that Shakespeare was originally a Klingon. So, how do you know where it came from first? Actually, I made that up. I don't think the Russians have ever said that. We made up a lot of stuff at DLI. It was, and I remember Gospaja Foreman always saying, "Don't invent." She didn't want us inventing our own Russian. We were pretty creative. I haven't cleaned this out since March of 2019. It's okay, it's Jamison's. No, I'm just kidding. So the interesting thing for me here is this is a memory question. Because people will have studied them, remembered them when we brought it up. So that means you had them in your brain. You knew these, but you couldn't remember them when I first asked it. So here's my brain theory. Every experience you have, you remember. Every experience you've ever had is in there. It's a recording device. It records it. When they say at night during REM sleep, you clean it up and you say, oh, I don't want this, I don't want this, I don't want this. I think that's nonsense. You rearrange things, but it's like your email folder, you put it in another folder, but if you need it, you can always go back to it. And if, for example, I look at my heels and I'm wearing ruby slippers and I click my heels together, what am I saying? There's no place like home, right? Isn't that cool? Yeah. You didn't study that last night to get ready for it. It was already there. How about this one? How did Mufasa die?
No, Scar.
Oh, that's Scar.
So you remember. You just also realize you made the mistake and you're blushing because of it. That's kind of cool. No, right. As I asked that question, can you even picture the music? Dun, dun, dun. As the music's playing, how it goes, and that.
Simba screaming no and all that stuff.
Yeah.
If you're saying remember everything, then how come I don't remember
I think you do.
I thought your memories don't happen until you're like 5 or whatever.
There's certain, like some people, you know, like.
No, I think you record those things too. It's just that you haven't developed the ability to reflect on those experiences so that you can say what was happening.
Yeah, I think I saw somewhere that your memory doesn't
Like
really
most
come
of
in-
your
come
memories
into-
are like unconscious.
Yeah, you don't really like start like realizing that you're like retaining stuff.
Just like I can't think of
Freud?
Freud, yeah.
Of course, we laugh at Freud now, but
What?
yeah. There's a lot of things Freud said that are still important, but yes.
So you mean like you're memorizing all the experience? So you're saying that we're like getting all this information, all these things we're perceiving in our brain, and then like not like create anything.
Not editing it, not deleting it. I think what happens though is you have ways of remembering things that are triggered by events. Like when I clicked my heels, if you had seen the movie The Wizard of Oz,
Yeah, but those could be like specific events. Like I can hear something, and then like it goes to my brain, and then I can hear it, right? And then I'm gonna forget that. Like,
can you remember how your mother sounded?
I mean, that's like repeatedly happening, and also like.
Well, I'm not sure that I'm right. This is a theory, and theories are neither true nor false, because theories are never in the format of those 4 statement types.
Yeah, there's like long-term memory, short-term memory, all those things. Because I was told like in psychology class like all this memory function. And yeah.
Yeah, I realize that a lot of psychologists would disagree with me and think it's ridiculous. That's okay with me, I'm fine. I like being ridiculous. I've not heard any reason to think that we erase memories that, oh, I won't need that. I won't need these shoes anymore and throw them out. You could do that with shoes, but I don't think we really have a delete button in our brain. Yes.
I just want to say for the idea that you wouldn't delete your memories of being like a 4-year-old or younger. I didn't really study child development or anything, but I did take psychology classes, and they're always saying like the effects that your surroundings have on you can be like very, very what's the word, like influential in the rest of your life. Like let's say, like in the 60s, they were told to let your baby cry it out, which is incorrect. You shouldn't do that. And I think that made babies more clingy because they need.
By the way, influence comes from the German Einfluss. Fluss is a river. So as another river adds to it, it changes, of course, the river, which is just kind of
It
neat.
doesn't have to be memories. It doesn't have to like.
It's not really
Still
memories,
have
though.
that. Like still can affect that. But it doesn't mean we still have that. Or something like that. There's like a lot of stimulus going around us.
But like with the Lion King, I mean, I asked the question, and I think you could actually play the whole scene out in your head. And by the way, the reason Mufasa died was because he didn't move Fasa.
Yeah, I would agree that we all focus on that specific event, and we're not like focusing on, like, for example, someone's talking.
If you think of memories or just brain activity in general as just electrical impulses in the brain, then forgetting something would just be your brain not having that electrical impulse again. So to say that something is necessarily, forgotten, like you said, you can't really forget things. I find it interesting because it's like, well, if it doesn't have that electrical impulse again, do we define that as forgetting something? Because let's say that impulse repeats, then would we be remembering that, or would that action just be repeating? Like, because it all kind of comes down to.
You need the right switch to trigger
Yeah.
that memory.
It's not like object that can be measured. But
Yeah, I'm not saying that you can necessarily measure, like, obviously you can measure like the voltage of the brain, but that's not gonna lead you to what the memory is. I'm more saying that there's a particular reaction that goes on, not like chemical, but like there's a particular thing that happens in the brain when you remember something. Like, you know, MRIs, they like play certain amounts of music and they measure what or amount of blood flows to your head to make sure your brain's all healthy. You know, maybe memories are kind of the same way in the sense that when you remember something, a certain area of the brain is lighting up and, you know, it kind of triggers that memory, and maybe your brain just is more attached to some certain electrical impulses than other certain electrical impulses.
By the way, this is where this whole idea is triggered for me, came from the theory, the orchestrated object reduction, or OR theory. And the argument here is that our brains are quantum computers as opposed to Turing type machines only. And the idea is that in the microtubules, that's where some of our memories are lodged, you know, the circuits, you know, in the microtubules. And as a result of that, we have basically an infinite resource in our minds, so to speak. And, you know, okay, so you know, these things get memorized in that particular cell, right? And it's there, you know, if it gets triggered, it can cause this event. That's a big argument too, whether or not our minds are quantum, because I mean there's a whole bunch of physics things associated with that, because the quantum computers that they're building in Berkeley Labs, for example, need an incredible amount of coldness in order to keep the quantum states stable. And our brains are warm, too hot for those kinds of functions, they argue, for them to be quantum type computers. I just think that these guys are right and those guys are wrong, because I like this view because it gives me a soul. Basically, quantum exists non-locally. In other words, a local event is something that's like here and now, right? But non-local goes through all the past and the future. In fact, I can have experiences of the future before they happen. Did you have something you wanted to add to earlier?
Oh, yeah, I guess. I mean, I was just gonna ask, or I guess, latch on to what she was saying earlier about like not really forgetting anything. I was just gonna ask them if that's the case, like referring to the commandment question. I guess could it be said that since you're not really forgetting information, more or less retaining it, that you're not necessarily forgetting those commandments, you're just more or less remembering it in a different form in which you may have learned it. You know, like just like in your day-to-day life, just those like commandments or stuff like aren't necessarily like specific things. They're more or less fundamentals that are just ingrained into your morals in general. So you might just be hearing the same thing, just in different variances.
I would think so. I think so. But then I'm biased towards this point of view. But notice, it is easier to remember things if it's in a story. When it's in a story, we remember the whole story. So when I asked about Mufasa, you know, you could put him into the various, you know, scenes, you know, maybe even sing Hakuna Matata, Hakuna Matata. Ain't no passing craze, it means no worries for the rest of your days. And I'll stop singing because I don't have any talent, if you remember. But the commandments are technical writing. You have to remember those by repeating them in order, or if you have a song that enables you to remember them, etc. By the way, there's of course arguments over which commandments are which, etc. So,
Would just be like the law is, or I guess what's right now is just like so simple that it can more or less be, I don't know, altered in your brain in a way to where it's like still coming up just like in different ways. You know, like maybe someone might have said the same.
yeah,
same
well,
thing,
they're
just
like
in a different way.
they're like morphemes and phonemes in our language, right? So that you know you can create a new word. Like I like to point out, this class should be the funnest class you ever have. I hope. And I should be the most fascinating teacher you've ever experienced. You know, that's my hope. But it's not going to happen. But the funnest? Anybody have trouble with me saying it's the funnest? What's wrong with that?
Subjective statement.
No, worse than that. It's grammatically incorrect because it's not funnest. It's most fun. You're not supposed to say funnest. Fun is irregular. Well, I mean, at least you don't have it all the time. Fun. No, I'm grammatically incorrect quite frequently. Thank you. Remember, I'm reading Harry Potter en français. Inoublié means unforgettable. Wow, I learned that last night reading. I'm at the point in book 4, the Goblet of Fire. Well, it's just fun. Okay. Well, I have to stop having fun right now. Hopefully, this introduction, so to speak, has been a fun way of saying yes, you should have a fun time in the class. Should be an easy A. You should enjoy doing the writing and learn a lot of philosophical vocabulary, which is my goal, right? Do you have questions for me? Yes.
I might have missed it, but what was the assignment for today?
Oh, when is it due? For the class, I'd prefer it if you emailed me the response to the quiz question before our next class. For my online class, which are doing the same quiz questions, I'm asking them to send it by Saturday night, midnight of the next week. So they're going week by week. But at the end of the course, what I do is I gather all your emails, put them in a flash drive, and weigh it. That's a joke. No, I just check and make sure that you've participated. Most people do, because these are fun. These will be fun questions, because you're talking about the 10 Commandments. Did you remember 4, 6? But then when you looked at them, you remember the others. So they're in there. You just didn't have them triggered properly in order to bring them up. Yes.
So I wasn't brought to church as a kid. I don't know the 10 Commandments. So can I just look them up or make my own?
Oh, feel free.
Make my own.
You could, yes, you can make, a lot of those favorites were made up, clearly. by
Yeah.
people. Yeah. Or you could do both, and see why I brought them up. A lot of people think they're Christian. Actually, how many folks know they're actually what?
Judeo-Christian, right?
Well, or Jewish. They were from Moses. Moses was pre-Christ, so couldn't be Christian in that sense. Jesus was Jewish. Paul was at least half Jewish, etc. That's all fun stuff too. We'll cover